All right, thanks, Paige, for coming on. Tell us what we got to know.
Well, there is so much fear. Well, let me back up. I'm Paige Zecker with Movement Mortgage. I used to be a realtor and sold with Bonnie. She and I have worked together and been friends for a very long time. So even though I'm a lender now, I come to the real estate market, and what I bring to the transaction is a totally different perspective because I've been in your shoes. And I look at the market data differently. I'm listening to different experts, and I just think I'm able to help reiterate what it is, those conversations that you're having with your clients, and help them get through the minutia that they're hearing in the media. And just some reoccurring conversations that I'm having. And I do loans in North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So I'm seeing and hearing different things depending on the market. Real estate is like the weather. You can look at what's going on nationally. Nationally, it's summertime in the United States, so it's hot everywhere. But when you get into each individual area, the weather is going to be different depending on where you are. Real estate is exactly the same way. So what people are hearing on the news is national. As a real estate professional, we know real estate is local, and helping those buyers understand what's going on, buyers and sellers for that matter, what's going on in our local market and how it applies to them. Is now a good time to sell? Is now a good time to buy? Are the questions that your clients are having, and helping them disseminate the information to make those educated decisions. One of my favorite phrases has become data over drama. And so that's kind of what I've entitled my presentation for you guys today. Is it okay if I share my screen real quick?
I'm still writing down data over drama. I'm putting it data over drama.
All right. It's data over drama and helping your clients to win within a shifting market. Right now in the news, and this is nothing new, the news is selling fear. It has been going on for years. It's been going on since before the housing crash in 2008. We're in a bubble. And so what they're selling right now is nothing new. So the question that your clients are asking, buyers in particular, should I buy a home right now? There's a couple of things causing this fear. One, home prices have gone up dramatically. In the most recent recession in the rearview mirror is the housing crash in 2008 and the recession that followed. And then we've got record inflation. We've got interest rates that are going up, rapidly escalating home prices, and that's just instilling and then everything that the news is trying to sell about a housing crash, it has people scared to death. Let's take a look at mortgage interest rates. Inflation drives interest rates. You can see in this chart here, the CPI index is a leading indicator as far as what is going on with inflation. So you can see as the blue line is interest rates, the white line is the CPI index or the inflation. These big bars are the times that we've had recessions. So recession actually, even though we don't, recession, nobody likes going through a recession, it does have a positive impact on interest rates. So you can see even in every single recession that we've had, inflation shot up, we had a recession, interest rates came down. So where we're at in the market, all the indicators that came out yesterday with the consumer confidence, it was down. That's another indicator that we're heading towards a recession. Sales stay strong. The housing market stays strong during times of recessions. The home prices continue to go up anytime there was a recession, with this one exception, which this is 2008. And the recession did not cause the housing crash. The housing crash caused the recession. Mortgage rates during times of recessions tend to drop. So we're seeing an escalation in mortgage rates right now. Once the government finally comes out and announces that we are officially here in a recession, we should see rates begin to drop. One of those reasons is because one of the measures that the government has to kind of moderate or tame the inflation is raising the Fed funds rate. They're going to be doing that later today. And I just wanted to dispel a myth. And I even saw a post from a realtor friend of mine that's been in the business for decades. The Fed funds rate that we've been seeing in the news, the Fed's raising rates. Today, they're expected to raise by 75 basis points. That is not mortgage rates. The Fed funds rate is overnight or short-term lending. This is car loans, HELOCs, credit cards, short-term lending. And it is actually counterintuitive with mortgage rates. So as the short-term lending rates go up, it cools the inflation. And because inflation drives the interest rates, if inflation comes down, mortgage interest rates are going to come down as well. And if you look back over the last 6 recessions, going back to the 1980s, every time we had a recession, interest rates dropped. History is a really good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. Recessions do not equal a housing crisis. There's, out of the last 6 recessions, only 2 we've seen home prices drop. That was in 1991, and they dropped just a tiny little bit. And the other one was 2008. And again, the recession did not cause the housing crisis. The housing crisis caused the recession. And that's a whole different conversation in and of itself. The only thing that we are seeing right now that is similar to 2008 is the rapid increase in home prices, and they are caused by 2 totally different things. So everybody thinks that, oh, this feels like 2008. If all you're looking at is home prices, yes, it feels like 2008. But it's good, and if we can have a different side conversation on why 2008 housing crash took place and how it's different today to help educate your buyers. One of the biggest differences is inventory. We looked at this with Bonnie. And the new inventory, the amount of inventory versus the amount of buyers that are in the market, and the rate of absorption. And this is one of those things that it's important to really pay attention to. And I had actually asked her if she would put that on the slides, or maybe even in the text when she's posting those different data points, elaborate on exactly what those mean to a consumer. And when she and I were having a conversation the beginning of last week, it looks like we've got a flood of homes hitting the market. And her kind of knee-jerk reaction was, oh my gosh, we're headed towards a buyer's market. And we took a step back and said, are we really? How many months of inventory do we have in the market right now? And we looked at, I don't remember if we looked at Canton, Alpharetta, what segment of the market we looked at. But when you take a look at the amount of all the inventory that's on the market versus how many homes have sold and closed in the last 30 days, there was 1.8 months of inventory. A balanced market is between 5 and 6 months. We're still even with all the inventory hitting the market right now, we are still in a very solid, almost extreme seller's market. We've got a long way to go before we hit a balanced market, much less a buyer's market. Where we're at now, across the nation, we've got 1.16 million homes available for buyers to purchase. Compare that to 2008 when we were at a peak of 3.8 million. It is supply and demand. One of the reasons that we've got such a demand right now, or lack of supply right now, is single family homes completed. This is new construction. In 2008, we had all this new construction that was hitting the market. And the only way inventory truly grows is by homes being added to the inventory. How do they get added? It's new construction. It is when somebody sells a house and does not buy another house. If you've got a seller that's moving up, they sell one house, buy another house, that does not add to the housing inventory. They take one, or they sell one and they take one. That's a net zero. So the only way the inventory actually increases, builders, somebody dies and somebody decides instead of aging in place, they're gonna move to an assisted living facility. I have not heard any of the experts talk about this. This is one of the things that I feel like is going on, is people are aging in place. People are getting older. So the life expectancy is increasing. So people are staying in their homes longer. And because of that, we've got a housing shortage. So over the last 15 years, since 2008, when builders stopped building, here is 2008 when we were at a peak of new homes hitting the market. Here's where we've been. 14 years, builders have been what they were building 50 years ago. That's huge. So builders can't build fast enough. This shows purchase activity remains strong. One of the things that I think people have gotten a little hyper-focused on is the last 2 years. If we can help people realize and put some perspective around the last 2 years, these last 2 years were an absolute anomaly. If you were to take the last 2 years out of the equation, we're very much in a normal market. With COVID, you couldn't show houses, people weren't moving, we were on lockdown across the world. So there was this pent up demand that all of a sudden, as soon as the country opens back up, the housing market opened back up too, and it was just filling that demand. So it's beginning to balance out a little bit, but I think the news media is capitalizing on, once we hit this peak, oh my gosh, the housing market is cooling off. we're hitting a crash.
Can
Okay,
you go back? Can you go back to that one just a second? I want to add something with all this fear mongering. I don't know. I haven't run the numbers, but I would suspect that this pent up demand, which is also a marketing ploy to control the economy. It's all it is. That's why Chick-fil-A's closed on Sunday. This right here is exactly, if you probably plotted it, how the gas prices are in the oil demand, because no one was using the gas, built up this demand for it. They had all this supply. Now the demand is up and gas prices are going through the roof because of how we've held it back. It would look very similar to this. So if you're worried about inflation and all that stuff going on, which inflation is going to happen regardless, but if you're worried about that, it will come back down. If it hasn't already started. I don't know.
It has.
Put attention to it, but I'm saying I believe this is an exact copy of what they look like. Now then, they don't want to open up. The shareholders of the OPEC companies, they don't want to open up because they love this pent up demand and these profits that they're getting. So it might stretch out a little longer, but it's going to come back down. So everybody that's so fearful of all this stuff, everything comes back around.
Okay, I want to talk just very briefly and then I'll move on because I don't have a slide about this. I have a slide, I just did not include it in this presentation, that shows, the inflation rates, what they're looking at. So these numbers, we're at like 9.1 or something right now. What they're looking at is year over year. So they're looking back June of last year versus June of this year. So July, August, and September of last year, inflation rates were actually low. So when they take the inflation rates from this year and compare them to last year, it's a bigger gap. So when they're looking at that year over year inflation rates, the next 3 months are going to seem even higher. But as inflation really started to escalate at the end of last year, those year over year comparisons are going to be smaller. So we're going to have continued high appreciation rates, most likely, for the next 3 months. And remember, back to that initial slide, inflation drives interest rates. So we'll probably continue to see interest rates increase following inflation for the next couple of months. And then as we get into the very end of the year, beginning of next, because those year over year inflation rates are going to be lower, we're probably going to see then inflation numbers come down and interest rates follow. So we talked about supply, here's the demand. So I don't know if anybody kept up with marketing trends, but for years, this baby boomer generation was talked about. They were the market movers. The baby boomers, as they moved through life, moved marketing trends. Well, look, that because the baby boomer was the biggest generation our country had seen up to that point. My generation, this Gen X generation, we had a little bit of dip in population compared to the baby boomers, but look where we're at right now. The millennials and Gen Zers are higher than the highest peak of the baby boomers. This is our demand right now. They are just now entering their peak home buying years. They're moving out of the apartments. They're going from having a roommate situation to they're now solid in their careers and they're wanting to buy homes. First-time home buyers today are not necessarily looking to buy the inexpensive homes. It is very surprising to me at first-time home buyers may be looking at $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes because they've made very wise investment choices. Maybe they've inherited some money. First-time home buyers don't necessarily mean low home prices.
I think the baby boomers were the wealthiest also across the board. Like we always talk about poor people in this country. The poor people in this country still have $1,000 iPhone. The people, homeless people still have $1,000 iPhone. So we talk about poor, go around the world, you'll see poor. So those people gave more money across the board anyway to these millennial generation.
And as the baby boomers, and I don't want to sound morbid, but as the baby boomers and the older Gen Xers are passing away, they are leaving inheritances and legacies like Don Rice talked about. They are leaving generational financial legacies to this millennial generation. And so these people are coming to the table with money.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I found is that those baby boomers, they believed in life insurance. They believed in it highly. And so that's one of the things. They're taking care of themselves in their death, but also taking care of their kids. And grandkids.
I mean, I'm working with somebody right now that first-time home buyer. They've got $125,000 down payment because of inheritance, and we are not liquidating all of their assets. So,
and also, it's become socially acceptable to be 25 and 30 years old and live at home. I just sold a house to a lady. Sold a lady's house, and her daughter, who I think is 25, had like a mental breakdown yesterday, over now she has to leave her childhood home. I'm like, she's 25.
So this is just a quote by Realtor.com that kind of summarizes what we just talked about. I did a video earlier this week, deceleration, and we talked about this last week too when we were looking at Bonnie stats. Decelerating home prices is not the same thing as depreciating home prices. So we've got the sellers have just now caught up to the fact that they can probably get more money for their house than they ever thought imaginable. So they've overpriced their homes. The demand has cooled down a little bit because of the interest rates. They are having to come down off the list price, like Daniel said at the beginning of the call.
Which wasn't recorded.
And he was right. Now this is recorded. I will say Daniel was right.
Pat on the back for Daniel.
Yes.
Hey, if you don't pat yourself on the back, nobody else will.
Exactly. So decelerating home prices only means instead of seeing 20, 30, 40% home price increases year over year, we may see 15. I saw a stat from another realtor friend of mine, the metro Atlanta area for June of last year compared to June of this year had almost 15% home appreciation. Yes, that's down. So the home prices aren't going up quite as fast, but that doesn't mean home prices are coming down. We couldn't sustain home prices continuing to go up at the rate that we've seen it. The depreciation or the acceleration rate needed to come down. Here's an interesting stat I also saw. As fast as home prices were going up, rental rates have also gone up. Atlanta, Sandy Springs, Roswell area for May 2020 saw an average rental increase of almost 15%. So there's a lot of talk about affordability in the market. If a buyer buys a house and they are stretching to the very limit of what they can afford, Sean Rawls has coined a term that has just hit the real estate industry and the mortgage industry like a wildfire. And that is marry the home, date the rate. When you buy a home, when that buyer moves from a rental where rental rates are going up 15%, and actually I do a lot of business down in South Florida because those rental rates have gone up almost 40% year over year. So the best thing that a person can do to hedge against inflation is lock in your home price. The biggest portion of somebody's budget is their home. And if you're looking at your rental rate going up 8, 10, 15%, 40% year over year, how do you afford that? I've got so many first-time home buyers that can no longer afford to rent. And so rental rates, I've also just recently heard rental rates will follow about a 2-year lag time between home prices and rental rates. So we're just now beginning to see the acceleration of rental rates. So here is the opportunity. Let me get out of this. All right, do y'all see this buy versus rent? So here's a comparison I can do for any area. I can do it for a specific listing. I could do it for a zip code. This I did just for Cherokee County. Let's assume median, one of the numbers that I looked at, depending on what source you're looking at, this particular source said the median home price in Cherokee County is currently $325,000. So let's say a first-time home buyer is currently renting and they're looking at buying that median home price home of $325,000. Their principal and interest for their first year of buying is going to be just shy of $1,900. They're renting first year $2,100. So the net expense by the time you add taxes and insurance, the monthly expense for purchasing a home is going to be a little over $2,500 versus renting. This is just an average rental rate for Cherokee County, $2,173. That first year, it's going to cost that buyer more money. So they're not going to save a dime by buying versus renting. And this is a conversation that potential first-time home buyer is having with themselves and possibly having with you too. They're going, why would I not rent? Why would I buy instead of rent if it's going to cost me more to buy? Here's why. One, they have no idea that rental rates are going up as rapidly as they are. So let's say they just continue to rent for the next 9 years. Let's look at this graph here on the right. So this first year, it's more, the dark blue bar is purchasing, the purple bar is renting. First, second, third year, it's more expensive to own. Break even at 4. And these numbers, I'm only using an annual rental increase of just shy of 6%. Average annual increase in Cherokee County was 8% for just a renewal. And it's going from one rental to another rental. If they move from one house to another, that's where the 15% comes in. So this is using very, very conservative numbers. After year 4, they're at break even. And then years 5 through 9, the average length of time somebody's in a home is 9 years. So the average length of time, in that length of time, going to take 5 years before it makes sense on a monthly basis. Cash flow difference, in that 9 years, they've saved $18,000 by owning instead of renting. But here's what people forget, and first-time home buyers don't even realize this. You've got appreciation gain, the market's going to help you out, and then you're going to also just do natural amortization of your loan. So let's look at the market in those 9 years based on a forecasted very, very conservative appreciation rate of below 4%. We haven't seen 4% appreciation in years and years and years. At a 3.75% annual appreciation rate at the end of 9 years, just the appreciation alone, they're going to have almost $128,000 in equity in their home just from market appreciation. And then you've got the amortization just from paying the principal loan amount down of almost $45,000. Let's assume they sell their house after 9 years. There's going to be some cost at selling their house. We're going to say that it's a 6%. The net gain by buying this house and keeping it 9 years, they have put almost $160,000 in their pocket. If they rent, what is their plan to accumulate $160,000? They don't have one. Would this help anybody to show this to a buyer?
Yeah, the devil's advocate of that is they'll say there's maintenance and cost and upkeep and that kind of stuff, but it still isn't going to come anywhere near 100.
It's not $157,000 though.
But that's what a rental brain is going to think.
You know what? And we've already got factored in that net number, maintenance and repairs. So that's already in there. Okay, so let's take a look at that. If we add in here 8% year over year increase, here's this number. Their break-even point is 3. Let's put in 14%. It's only 1 year or 2 years before they're at break-even. I want to show you one more thing. I'm beginning to see, and Bonnie's stats are showing this too, home prices are beginning to come down, or at least list prices are coming down. People that have been in the market, agents that have been in the market less than 10 years have never experienced a buyer's market. Really have not seen sellers negotiating on price, sellers paying concessions. So I just wanted to share with you, and I'm doing a lot of education with agents that I'm working with in other parts of the country where I work. And I wanted to show you a side-by-side comparison of a buyer paying full price with no seller concessions versus a price drop. So all these sellers that are taking price reductions right now, what else they could do is maybe pay a buyer's closing cost or paying some points, because rates have gone up. Affordability is a challenge because somebody's pre-approval, somebody's home affordability is based on that monthly payment. So if we can make that monthly payment less, that allows them to buy more or be more comfortable getting in a house. Let's take a real quick look at what that difference might be. Here in this left column, full price, no concessions. Medium price home, 6% interest rate. Their monthly payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, $2,250. Let's say that seller agrees to a 2% price drop. They agree to take the price down $6,500. Help the buyer out a little bit. Their monthly payment comes down $37. Their cash to close doesn't change much at all. It goes from $17,400 to $17,200. Saves $200 in the amount that they've got to bring to closing. What if the seller, instead of reducing their price by 2%, they take 2% and they buy discount points for the buyer? It's a seller concession of 2% that gets applied to reduce the rate permanently. So instead of 6%, they're going to pay, that buyer now has a 5% interest rate for the life of this loan. What that does to their monthly payment, so instead of $225 or $222 or $2,000, look over here. They're saving $200 a month versus saving $37 a month. Same $6,500 net to the seller is identical. Much bigger benefit to the buyer. Now let's see what, over a little longer term, what the benefit to the buyer is. So same $6,500 again. Over the course of 5 years, that buyer, reducing the interest rate, is going to mean that buyer is going to save almost $16,000 in interest. That's almost three times what that $6,500 got them. Versus the price drop, they would save $1,800. Let's say somebody doesn't need, that the monthly savings isn't their hot point. Maybe their cash to close is their sticking point. So let's have them pay full price for the house, have the seller pay 2% in their closing costs. Seller can pay up to 3% on a conventional, 6% on an FHA. But let's say they don't want to be that generous. They're only going to pay 2%. So we're going to take that $6,500, and instead of buying down the interest rate or reducing the purchase price, we're going to apply that to the buyer's closing cost. It reduces their cash to close by $6,500. So now instead of needing over $17,000 to get into the house, they're getting into the house with a little shy of $11,000. Do you think this would help any buyers?
Yeah, I had an important point here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that as the market becomes more balanced, some of these people who couldn't buy because of money, just like you pointed out there, will now be able to buy.
Right.
So that's going to help bring some more. But even though the interest rates are still a little higher, it's going to bring some new buyers into the market where they couldn't buy before.
Okay, so great point. But because we're qualifying buyers based on a monthly payment, so if somebody is maxing out their purchase power with a monthly payment of $2,200, if you've reduced their monthly payment by $200 because the interest rates come down, maybe they don't buy a $325,000 house. This is going to allow them to go buy a $425,000 house. So those buyers that thought they were priced out of the market that 3 months ago were looking at a $425,000 house with this seller buy down strategy, they could still be looking at that $425,000 home if the seller would be willing to pay some discount points. Seller can pay up to 3%. So they could get that rate down even lower. So now you've got buyers, if they're out looking at a certain price range right now and they don't like what they see, and maybe y'all's buyers are different than the buyers that I work with, but when I was working with buyers, they always wanted that next price range up. This would allow them to get that next price range up. They've got to be clear that this is only going to work if the seller's willing to pay some concessions and you buy that interest rate down. But you could use this as rather than reducing the purchase price, if you've got a listing that's been lingering a little bit, rather than having that conversation with the seller saying, it's time to reduce the price, maybe you change your marketing, because now those buyers that looked at the house a month ago that ruled it out because they didn't, they couldn't afford it. Now that the rates have gone up, you can go back to them and say, hey, my seller's willing to pay X number of dollars to buy your rate down. Your payment's going to be here. It makes this home much more affordable. You can put in the private remarks, seller willing to pay 2% towards buyer's discount points, closing costs with a full price offer. You've just made your home more competitive and stand out in a market where the inventory is beginning to build. It makes the homes more affordable for buyers to get in them, and it keeps more money in your pocket because you're paid based on the sales price.
If you had a house that needed, let's say, $20,000 in repairs, say it's a $450,000 house, what is the best scenario to go with as far as seller concession? What's the best way you think to position that property?
Get a renovation loan. It's going to depend on the buyer.
Let's say the buyer is a FHA buyer in the house. Well, that would put you on the 2 or 3K type loan. I'm thinking about how do you position it for the buyer and the buyer and the buyer's agent, who typically don't understand it. But anyway, so the people know they're going to be able to have the money to do it. So obviously, also money today is worth more than money in the future. Look at this inflation, right? Mm-hmm. So that $10,000 towards repairs or $10,000 towards closing costs or buy down points or something would be, I don't know if it's $10,000, you got to limit it to 3%, but I don't know which way would be better to position a property that needs some repair.
Okay, so the really quick answer, and it doesn't take a lot of education for your buyers or the buyer's agent. In that case, one, lenders do not like concessions for repairs. Do not add anything about repairs in your amendment, just the seller's paying some concessions, period, end of sentence. So those concessions can be used to pay down the buyer's closing cost. And like you see in this fourth scenario here, it is a dollar for dollar benefit to the buyer in reduction of the amount of money they've got to come to closing with. So if that seller says there's X number of dollars of repairs that need to be done, I can pay 3% of the purchase price. You pay me full price. I'm going to pay 3% of your closing costs, and it gets that buyer in the house with less money than they had already committed to bringing to the closing table, and they can then take that money and take care of the repairs outside of closing.
And if they put down more money too, if they don't have to bring as much closing costs to the table, and they were able to put it to and go from flip from FHA to conventional loan, that probably helps them out too, as far as actually getting the loan if there's repairs needed that are required.
Typically, if somebody is getting FHA loan, it's not because of the lack of money, because there's first-time home buyer conventional loans. They only have to put 3% down versus 3.5% for FHA. Typically with FHA, the reason a buyer is going to go FHA is only two. One, their debt to income ratio does not allow them, is too high to go conventional. or their credit score is not high enough to qualify for conventional. So
Well, their foreclosure hadn't fell off yet.
yeah, that too.
That's what
You
I
know,
see over and over.
They've got that, but that ties into their credit as well. So it's credit history, not just credit score. But FHA, they've got to have a minimum of 580 versus a 620 for conventional. So typically that buyer, if funds for closing was an issue and they had a good enough credit score, they're already going to. But they could, if they had extra funds, they could also take the seller concession and then the buyer buy down that interest rate to make the home that much more affordable.
I mean, buying down the interest rate makes more sense over the long term.
It does.
7-10 year period to miss.
It does. It does. I know we have run over, Daniel. I know you like to keep this to 30 minutes, and I've got a call scheduled in 3 minutes. Let me put my information. Let me stop sharing here. I'm going to put my information in chat. If anybody would like me to run an individual scenario for a client that you're working with, or perhaps even a listing, I'm more than happy to do that.
This is awesome. Anybody have any questions for her? There's a lot of information. She always pace throws a lot out. So I would highly recommend when I get it loaded to Strategy Real Estate Partners, go back and watch this a couple times, make some notes on it, because she definitely puts a lot out there. I'm gonna send you.
This is only one of my tricks.
I'm gonna send you some. I'm gonna get you by the end of the day on a property that I've got. This the one I'm talking about with repairs. So I've got to figure out how to help these buyers.
Okay.
Because these buyers agents are not helping.
All right.
All right, guys. Any other questions?
I've got a quick question, Daniel. It's Paula.
Hey.
So if the seller does that buy down, is that just a special stip they write in the special stipulations then?
Seller pays 3% towards buyer's closing costs and discount points.
Okay.
And let the loan officer know that it needs to be applied to discount points. So whatever that dollar amount is, we're going to apply that towards the discount points to get that rate down.
Any other questions? Good question. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you, Paige. I'll call you later today. I'll be sharing insightful and informative videos on stress-free retirement, being your own bank, setting up college funds, understanding Social Security, wills, probate, trust, and how the Fed Reserve rate hikes affect your mortgage rates. And always real estate solutions. I'm your go-to expert in real property. Look for my YouTube channel, living in Canton, Georgia, where it is sunny as can be right now. If you find value here, please like and share so others might as well. Remember, I'm not a videographer, not a video editor. I just want to share the most important info with you guys. Each video has a full version of around half hour or so, but there are multiple shorts of only 5 minutes or less as well. My name, Daniel Klopfelter. My area of specialty is real estate and asset protection for more than 25 years. So why am I exhorting you to view financial-based videos on a real estate channel? Good question. I believe that we all do better when we know better, which is why I'm here to expose you to a team of experts who know the topics that matter most. All of these topics work in unison. Full disclosure, I receive nothing for doing these videos other than the satisfaction of adding value to you. So smash that like button already. What are you waiting for? Share this so other people can see it. Y'all have a great day. Hey.